The one other thing I will talk about before we get to Legends, I have in my hands now, I own a Retroid Pocket Plus 2 or 2 Plus. I still don't know the actual naming of it. Um, I had been intending to buy a retro emulation device for about the last 6 months now. But with me and technology, I always have this. I'll wait till the next version comes out. I'll wait until we have, like, we're in the next generation, because there's always these improvements that come along, and you end up never buying anything because you're just always holding off. And with a lot of these devices, there was always like, hey, everything is awesome about it, but the D-pad isn't comfy, or the OS isn't that great, or the actual installation of it is a nightmare, or it doesn't have a touchpad. So there was always something making me just like, I'll wait. But there were reviews coming for this new version of the Retroid Pocket 2 that seemingly fixed a bunch of those issues, which were all the things I just mentioned above. And it has a price point of $99, which is, for what this is offering, I think is insane. After conversion and postage and packaging, I paid €150. This device, in theory, I say in theory, plays up to the generation of Dreamcast, GameCube, and PlayStation 2. Now, it can open a lot of games on the GameCube and PlayStation 2. I wouldn't say exactly that it can run them. There are some exceptions. You do have to play around with some of the settings for some of those games. But Dreamcast-wise, it can play anything on the Dreamcast I've thrown at it. So really, anything prior to that you can find an emulator for and ROMs for, it's going to play that. So I've spent the last week or so picking and choosing stuff from the Sega Saturn and the Game Boy Advance and the PlayStation, and jumping back into my childhood with some of those titles. And ergonomically, like, it feels really good in your hands to hold. It's got a 4.3 resolution ratio. Resolution is 480, I believe, and which is totally fine. Totally works for like the games that you're going to be playing, because they all use the 4:3 ratio. The only issue that you'll run into is if you try to play anything actually from the Android store, because those games you're better off just playing on your mobile phone, to be honest. But it's nice to have the option to actually use like actual controls to play something like Rocket League Sideswipe. It has the shoulder buttons on either side, and they feel comfy. The D-pad sometimes feels, depending on the game that you're playing, like I'm trying to play the Celeste Classic, the original version of Celeste, and I feel like the analog stick is a little bit too close to the D-pad, so sometimes I'm having to angle my hand around it to play like those kind of twitchier platform style games. But the left analog stick feels fine. The right analog stick is like one of those slider analog sticks, and it's garbage, but like the amount of games that you're going to be actually using that for, maybe if you want to set up the N64 emulator to use the C buttons on that, but otherwise there's nothing that you're going to really play with it. And then really all it comes down to is just the time that you want to spend into actually setting everything up, because there's like two screens really to the flow of this device. There is the home screen that looks like any kind of Android mobile phone, with all the apps and whatnot. And then there's an actual launcher that Retroid has pre-installed, but you can also download other launchers as well. And the one that Retroid has pre-installed, it looks like the Switch kind of home screen. You can swipe. It's like tile based, and you can swipe between them. And that has it starts off from like the Game Boy, and it goes up to like Neo Geo, and everything in between. It doesn't have the Sega platforms on there besides Dreamcast. I don't know why. They are updating it. There was a firmware update as soon as I got it, so I know that Retroid are updating this, and I'm hoping that it will have those other platforms on there. But the idea is that if you use the actual Retroid launcher, you can go in there, you can decide like, okay, this is the emulator that I want to use, if it can detect that you have that emulator on the device, and then you can just load all the games in there. Otherwise, if that isn't working, or if the launcher doesn't detect that emulator, as long as you have the emulator on your on the home screen, you can just go in that way and do it that way. But if you can get everything on the launcher, it just kind of makes it easier to, and a lot cleaner to have everything categorized that way. But I have had some issues with that, where I've been using RetroArch, which is this sort of all-in-one emulator service, but it's not detecting my input on anything that isn't a Nintendo handheld, and I've not been able to find a way to fix that. So I've been able to use the launcher for like all the handheld stuff, but I've just had to use like the standalone emulators for everything else, which is a bit of a pain. So it's not as organized and as clean as I'd like so far. But once you actually jump in and you're playing games, everything runs really well. I've maybe had like one or two exceptions here or there. All of the emulators have their own settings and stuff to kind of set up, like if you want to have frame skipping or hotkeys for auto saves and that kind of stuff. And like there's a bunch of different devices out there that are at different points in terms of price and like what they'll run. But for $99 and the fact that this will play up to Dreamcast games, I'm having a great fucking time with this at the moment. And I've currently downloaded like every single Game Boy Advance game and every single Game Gear game, and I'm gonna go in and find all the really bad games and spend some time with them.
And you've begun a domino effect of increasing sales for that company.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
I bought one too, by the way. So.
Did you?
You literally mentioned on Twitter. I looked at it. I liked the color schemes, and I bought one.
Oh, what color did you get?
For the 16-bit Super Nintendo Bones one.
I went orange.
I have
I also went orange because me and Dave are unfortunately the same guy.
We
about 90% of the time.
Did you cringe immediately when I said I got the orange because you knew?
I didn't even need to think about it. I was like, yeah, Dave will look at the orange.
Well, I would definitely be contacting Retroid to try and get a cut of their sales then for this, because this is ridiculous.
Can we get a sponsorship deal for the podcast? Because within a month now, all four of us are going to have it.
Oh my god. Yeah. What I will be interested though is to hear of your stories of like setting up for installation, because in theory you can just open it up, like once you're past like the initial setup, you can just go into the Android store, the Play Store, just download a bunch of emulators, and it's not that difficult to get them set up and start playing ROMs. But if you want to use the actual launcher and get stuff set like to be filtered through there is a little bit more setup to it, and I'll be interested to see if you kind of run into any trouble with that.
I kind of enjoy dicking around with that kind of stuff, so I think that'll be part of the fun for me when I get it.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, for me, there's a really good guy on YouTube who basically reviews these types of devices, and he had a really good guide to basically set up every emulator that you would need to use and through the launcher as well. So, if you do run into trouble, there is help out there for that kind of thing. And there's even there's a community run spreadsheet at the moment that's going through all the GameCube games to find out, okay, which ones actually can run. Because, Simpsons Hit and Run, no bueno. But stuff like Star Fox Adventures, that seems to be working okay. But yeah, it goes through everything for you, which is really cool. So yeah, I'm really digging it. And there's a new device that's either on the way called like the Odin, which actually is running PlayStation 2 and GameCube games like flawlessly. But that's around about like 250 quid, so it's a little bit pricier. But I'm looking at that now, thinking, maybe we'll see. So yeah.
I was so tempted by the Analog Pocket because I still have loads of my old Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, everything like that games which I'm getting no use out of. But I saw that it wouldn't ship until at least 2023, and then that immediately put me off.
Well, yeah, that was the thing that kind of set the snowball rolling for me, is because I wanted to get the Analog Pocket as well, but I was like, well, I don't actually have any cartridges. And while that screen, the form factor on it looks fucking delicious, I was like, I don't really want to pay 250 quid and then more to get the actual games for it. So at that point, it's like, all right, let's just fucking get one of these devices and be done with it.
Because I have, just before I even got this, I just have on my drive a folder that has 1,600 Game Boy games in ROM form, and probably an almost equal amount of Game Boy Advance games as well. So I'm just like, well,
Nintendo are going to break down your door any day now.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's the end of this
podcast. Gary Bowser over there.
All I really want, I just want to be able to play the Game Boy, Pokemon and Zelda games again. Those are the main ones. There's obviously other stuff I really do from the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, like Advance Wars, Wario Land, things like that. So all that other stuff, but your main thing is going to be just playing Pokemon Gold and Silver or Red and Blue again, or
Motherfucking
playing.
6 golden coins.
I can
Yeah,
confirm
man.
for you that the Retroid Pocket will definitely play all of these games.
Yeah.
So
I won't be like when you said, oh yeah, no, it does PS1. I was like, Mark, I'm not interested in that. I said, I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I have no emotional investment whatsoever in the PS1 because I didn't have one.
Yeah.
And I still have my N64 and pretty much all the games I would ever want to play on that. And the ones that look like shit are on the Rare Replay
but
collection.
also, like, emulation with the N64 is a nightmare because there's no control scheme that you can get set up that works like the way that original N64 controller does.
Mark does it. You're giving fuel to Sean McGee.
Oh,
Just by-
whatever. He's not listening to this. Yeah, so-
He's not on it. He's not listening.
Exactly. I will say the first game that I launched to see like how this thing would run was a DS game, and it was the Sonic RPG, The Dark Chronicles, which I feel like I'm one of about 3 people that played that fucking thing back in the day.
I thought you were going to say you're the 3rd ever person to play it now.
That as well.
I was gonna say you're definitely one of one people who have gone to the trouble of playing it originally and then playing an emulated version of it as well.
What can I say? I'm a maverick.